Welcome to Rams Up, a Los Angeles Rams podcast. We are a proud member of the Pigskin Podcast Network. We cover other SoCal sports news of interest, but we're mostly about your Los Angeles Rams. I'm your host, Mark. Let's get to it. Welcome back, Ram fans. Episode 22 of Season 2. And this is our 99th episode. We'll be hitting that 100 mark next week. Pretty excited about that. And next week will hopefully be that Dodger segment we have been talking about. Paul Walia and Tom Courts will join me, and we'll dive into the Los Angeles Dodgers for one episode. And a reminder, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. We have content dropping on there occasionally, 4, 5, 6, 7-minute videos that you might not hear on the podcast. So make sure you find it, like it, and subscribe, please. Let's get through this episode. The primary focus here today is racking and stacking, or I should say re-racking and stacking my top 10 favorite Ram plays of all time. Last year, during Season 1, I went through my top 10 and 5 honorable mentions, discussing each one of those favorite plays, one segment at a time, working up to number 1. I'm going to do it all over again, real quickly, restacking my top 10 and my 5 honorable mention. A few slip off, got a few new plays joining the list, which makes sense after what we saw last season. You can probably guess which ones are heading towards the top of my favorite 10 plays of all time. Get through some other Ram notes first. The Rams have re-signed Trevin Howard, so expect to see him on the 53-man roster, backing up Ernest Jones and Bobby Wagner. They also signed a Jared Pinkney at tight end, 6'4", 260, out of Vanderbilt. He signed with the Falcons in 2020 after going undrafted, was on the Rams practice squad briefly last season, and he was on the Lions active roster late in the year. Played in 2 games with no catches. And they also signed A.J. Rose, 6'1", 211 running back, another SEC product. He's out of Kentucky. He was undrafted, signed with the Vikings last year, had a 100-yard game in the preseason, had over 1,900 yards in college with 13 touchdowns, and plus 30 receptions with another touchdown. Not sure if there's going to be a long shot for him to make the roster, but we'll probably see him a lot in the preseason. Checked in on the salary cap situation for the Rams. According to Spot Track, they have over $9 million in cap space, as for the top 51, and according to Over the Cap, over $7 million. As of right now, 20 teams have more dead money than the Rams, and in 2023, the Rams, as of now, have 0 dead money, so Les Snead has that headed in the right direction. Some stadium news: the Rams have been selected as one of the sites of the 2026 World Cup. And remember, they're already hosting the 2023 College Football Championship. And it is also the site of the opening and closing ceremonies of the 2028 Summer Olympics. So SoFi in the limelight for sure. And that's not even including WrestleMania next year. And I've mentioned this before, I highly recommend you go on that stadium tour. If you're in the LA area or visiting LA, man, it's one of the best tours it is the best tour I've ever been on of any kind. Quite the deal. We ended up on the field. My son was kicking field goals from 35 yards out, throwing me touchdown passes, dropped one on a little toe tap there, but other than that, had a great time. We were on the field for about 2 hours, pretty much doing whatever we wanted. They had a couple skills things you could try. Just throw the football around, had the end zone to ourselves for about half an hour. It's a good time. I saw someone throwing out a new nickname for Cooper Kupp, White Rice. I get it. It's pretty funny, but I don't like attaching the name of a 49er to a Rams nickname. Don't like it, but it is kind of funny. So we're going to get back to that Dodger segment hopefully next week. Paul Walia and Tom Courts joining me. Thought I'd discuss them here as a little primer for that. And you know what? I think the Dodgers are kind of in trouble. The middle of that lineup, Muncy, Justin Turner, Cody Bellinger, those three guys batting 153, 206, 211 last time I looked. It's probably fluctuated a little bit by the time you hear this, but man, not getting it done. And Dave Roberts, great manager, but I think he shows a little bit too much attachment to some of these senior players on his roster. Can't give up on them. Maybe he needs to. I'm okay with Cody staying in the lineup. He's a great defensive player. But having all three of these guys in the middle of the order, it's just Doomsville at this point. And meanwhile, Gavin Lux, their third highest batting average on the team at 285, he's buried, batting ninth. Makes no sense. I asked a Dodger faithful what's up with that. He said, well, they won him in front of Mookie Betts, who's at the top of the lineup and struggling and now injured. And I don't buy it. I need Lux up at the top of that order somewhere and move Muncy and or Justin Turner off. They got a great farm system. Time to bring someone up. I'm sure they will. They have to. This offense is kind of pathetic. Overall batting 246 as a team, which is the same as the New York Yankees, so maybe that's okay. But overall, a couple of guys in the farm system that maybe deserve a shot at this point. Michael Busch, batting 270 with 15 home runs in Oklahoma City. He plays second base, though. And then Andy Page is an outfielder in Tulsa. He's been tearing it up. But does Roberts have the courage to move off a couple of these guys? I mean, if he was coaching the Rams, Todd Gurley would still be their starting running back, and he'd be averaging 1.8 yards per carry. That's the kind of coach Roberts is. It's kind of nice that he sticks with guys, but long-term, not a good thing. Time to move on. The Los Angeles Dodgers, time to move off a couple of these guys, in my opinion. Of course, low batting averages, that's a trend across Major League Baseball. It's just become more acceptable. In 1987, the Dodgers had the worst team batting average in Major League Baseball, 252. The overall batting average in Major League Baseball that year was 263. This is back in the day when guys like Willie McGee were hitting the ball into the alley, stretching doubles into triples. Batters were spraying the ball all over the field, maybe even mixing in a little bit of hit and run. Fast forward to 2022, the overall league average has dropped to 242. 15 teams in Major League Baseball right now have a lower batting average than that Dodger batting average in 1987. That was 252, the worst in the league in 1987. We have 15 teams below that right now. The Oakland A's are batting 210. Before we get into our new top 10 plays of all time, my favorite top 10 plays of all time, a quick pet peeve has to do with Father's Day. I know you all want to reach out to your dad on Facebook and social media and call out your dad as the greatest dad ever. There can only really be one greatest dad ever, and I suspect it's not your dad. So maybe let's just revise those messages. Hey, I love my dad. My dad is awesome. Thank you for everything. So let's pump the brakes on that greatest dad ever stuff, shall we? Back in a second. Hockey fans, the pursuit of the Stanley Cup is on. Looking to turn a small bet into a big payday? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what. That's code TPPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. So last year, over the course of 10 episodes, I shared with everyone my favorite Ram plays, my top 10 favorite Ram plays, and I had 5 honorable mentions as well. Provided a lot of background and details on each of those plays. But I think it's time to rehash this, time to rack and stack my favorite plays once again, given all that has occurred since I finished that list about a year ago. So I am going to provide you with my updated top 10 plays with my new honorable mentions, and not going to provide as much detail because I'm going to do it all in this one segment. If you're interested in the details, you can go back to last year's episodes. I believe it was episodes 11 through 19 of my inaugural season, and check out what I had to say about each of these plays. Now I'm going to start at the bottom. 3 plays have fallen off my honorable mention list. I'm going to try to keep that list at 5. And the reason, obviously, because I have some additions to my top 10 and honorable mention list. The 3 that are falling off in 2018, Jared Goff's quarterback sneak to seal the win against the Seahawks. Never saw Jared Goff so pumped after that. I was pretty pumped too. Another one that's falling off the honorable mention list, 1983 at New York, playing the Jets. And this really wasn't a play. Perhaps it shouldn't have been on here at all. And that was what happened after the play. Jackie Slater going after Mark Gastineau, who had the gall to celebrate a coverage sack against one of the best offensive linemen the Rams have ever had. Jackie Slater wasn't going to put up with that and went after Gastineau. And in 1995, most of you probably don't remember this, a trick play, the Rams and Falcons. Rich Brooks was the coach back then, and he loved this kind of stuff. Trick play, Isaac Bruce taking a lateral from Todd Kinchin after a punt and running it back, I think, to the 9-yard line. Those all 3 fall off my honorable mention list. My new honorable mention list, Week 1, 2015, Aaron Donald stops Marshawn Lynch. That was a 4th down play. The Seahawks at St. Louis. This was on my top 10 list. It is no longer. Another one that fell off the top 10 list, Darius Williams pick 6 against the Seahawks in the playoffs. Rams went on to lose to Green Bay the following week without Cooper Kupp and with Aaron Donald playing at 50%. Goff had the banged up thumb, but in the previous game, Darius Williams, big pick 6 against the Seahawks. Another one that dropped a little bit, Greg the Legs 57-yard field goal to get the Rams into the Super Bowl against the Saints. And 2 that remain on the honorable mention list. 2017, not sure if you all remember this, Jared Goff to Todd Gurley, 53-yard catch and run against the Cowboys. And this was the play that indicated to a lot of us that maybe Sean McVay's Rams were on to something. That's how I remember it. And the last of the honorable mentions, 2014, the Austin to Stedman Bailey. Well, it wasn't really Austin to Stedman Bailey, but the Tavon Austin Stedman Bailey trick punt return. Austin pretending like he was fielding the punt, but it's Stedman Bailey running up the right sideline for the touchdown. So those are my 5 honorable mentions and the 3 that have been removed. My new top 10. And I have to apologize, there's some recency bias in here. Maybe in 10 years I'll look back and kind of resort through this. Maybe in 10 years I won't think of some of these plays as highly as I do today, but this is my snapshot. June 2022, my top 10 Ram plays, my top 10 favorite Ram plays of all time. Number 10, Cooper Kupp's 25-yard catch against the 49ers in the most recent NFL championship game. Never saw Cooper Kupp get so excited. Big catch against our arch rivals. I'll remember that for a long time. Number 9, another play that got us into the Super Bowl, Ricky Proehl's catch against the Buccaneers January 3rd, 2000. This one actually moves up a spot. Number 8, December 18th, 2017, another Todd Gurley play. And this was right before halftime against Seattle at Seattle. Rams had this game in hand. Late in the first half, they hand it off to Gurley, and he just rips off a run for a long touchdown. Before halftime, the Rams are clobbering the Seahawks, and Seahawk fans start to filter out of that stadium. And that was another play similar to the one against the Cowboys where you're like, man, this team is good. No doubt about it. And this was the game before the game in the locker room where McVay had that famous speech, if you want to call it that, to his team. Not a very long speech. My account is something like this: we're ready. There's nothing left to say. Let's effing go. My favorite sports quote of all time. Number 7, Flipper Anderson's catch for the win. January 7th, 1990, in the playoffs against the New York Giants. In overtime, Everett hits Flipper Anderson, and Anderson runs off the field through the tunnel. Game over. Number 6, Dante Fowler's hit on Drew Brees and John Johnson's interception on the same play set up Greg the Leg's field goal that we talked about earlier. That basically sent the Rams to the Super Bowl. That was the NFC Championship game. Fowler's hit on Brees and the interception. Number 5, Warner to Bruce in the Super Bowl. Man, that's got to stand out for a lot of us. I can still see it. Kurt Warner just getting the ball off and Bruce catching it, making a little move and dancing into the end zone. Number 4, same game, the tackle. Do I need to say anything more about that? Mike Jones' tackle to save the game in the Super Bowl against the Titans. And number 3, and this is one that was number 1 previously. I had this as number 1, and a lot of you probably are going to disagree, and I'm okay with that. But a play that I always remember, and the play that epitomizes the greatest show on turf, the season opener in 2000, the Rams had won the Super Bowl. They opened up against the Broncos in St. Louis, and Oz Hakeem takes a little pass about 10 yards downfield on the right side, makes a move, and next thing you know, Torrey Holt and Oz Hakeem are running side by side along the sideline, seemingly having a conversation with each other, and the announcers in that game had a good time with it. Wasn't a Super Bowl, wasn't a playoff game, wasn't even against an arch rival. It's just a play I love. And now to my top 2, and this is where we get into the recency bias. Number 2, Matthew Stafford hits Cooper Kupp with a no-look pass against the Bengals in the Super Bowl. Talk about clutch. Talk about 2 players that we all love. An incredible play. And yeah, kind of important too. That's my new number 2. And number 1, hey, none of that would have happened if it weren't for this play. Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp against the Bucs late in that playoff game in Tampa Bay. Saves the day. Didn't see it coming. I thought we were heading to overtime, and wow, what a pass, what a catch. And what a chaotic scene as the Rams rush up to the line of scrimmage, directed by Stafford. Will you ever forget that play and those players running up to the line of scrimmage to get that ball snapped and spiked so they can set up for the winning field goal? I'll remember that for a long, long time. I'll remember that more than the no-look pass. It's up there with that Hakeem and Holt run down the sideline, Mike Jones tackle, as far as images in my mind, the greatest play in Rams history. Hey, you may disagree, but that's why it's my list, not yours. Some data on my top 10. We're strictly talking about the top 10 here, not the honorable mentions. 3 were in Super Bowls, 2 from 1999, 1 from 2021. 2 were in NFC Championship games, Saints and Bucks, and 2 were from other playoff games, Giants and Bucks. 3 were from the regular season, 2 against the Seahawks, 1 against the Broncos. Now, when you talk about the honorable mention, include the honorable mention. One of them was from an NFC Championship game against the Saints. One was from another playoff game, Seahawks. And 3 more from regular season games, 2 against the Seahawks and 1 against the Cowboys. So that's it. My new top 10 plus the 5 honorable mention. Throw darts at it all you want. Maybe send me an email. Hey, if one of you have your top 10, I'll be glad to share it. Just send me an email, ramsuppodcast@gmail.com, and we will talk about it. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can reach out to us at ramsuppodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website at laramsup.com. And please don't forget, subscribe and give us that 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, keep the horns up, stay safe, and have fun out there.
Music courtesy of bensound.com and the YouTube royalty-free music audio library, Crimson Fly by Hama Hama.